going to be talking about how we, as a technology committee, came to determine what we were going to do in this space, what we would use in this space, how it worked, and so forth. So there's a lot of things we answered. It took us quite a while, a lot of effort, a lot of work to get there. We do not have the entire technology committee here. There's a lot of people that were involved, but they're very, very busy. So myself and Ed and Andy Duell will be joining us. He's with facilities. But we all work so well together and so tightly, I think we can pretty much speak for the group really well. And so we'll do that. But I also wanted to let you know that once today's sessions are closed and over, I do want to offer you the opportunity to hang around here as long as you want, as long as it's before 5. And we can sit, talk, unplug things, you know, stick cables together, see what happens, you know, whatever it is, we can deep dive into anything you want to. So I just want to make myself available because I know a lot of you probably still have a lot of questions and want to see some things. And of course, you certainly are welcome to come up and play with the system as well. Okay? So we're getting Andy over there going. Ed, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but I wanted to open it up for discussion as well, is how do you build the support model for this? Because you heard from some folks that own support for the entire campus. We get to be focused and only worry about supporting engineering. But it was a huge issue for us to figure out, work with the faculty of what level of support were they going to expect for this when you drop someone in, even that's been trained, into a new environment, and they're in front of all of the students. You know, as Mark described it, there's some beads of sweat that'll pop up occasionally if something doesn't work right. I can tell you that it happens. So we looked at it and we went back to Dr. Banks and we said, okay, we can't miss on this, so we're going to go heavy on the support side. So you may have seen them, but there's folks walking around with gray vests on. And so all of our student workers from an IT point of view wear the gray vests. And we had them positioned at the start of class, at the start of the semester, one outside of every 2 doors, so that you never had to open the door and look for help and there wouldn't be someone there. I will give you a side hint. The way to sell gray vests is to show them a pink vest to start with. Gray was not a problem after that. But we did go to that model. We also have a button on the screen that I will not describe as the Help I've Fallen button, although it sometimes is called that. You hit that and it rings the alarm and someone comes down. We've got certain rooms that we're putting bat phones in that you pick it up and it rings on the help desk as well. Just trying to get as much rapid response to the support challenge as we can. But having those students and putting them all through a very rigid training program so that they now can work with you as a faculty member when you say, but I'd like to go one step farther. How do I saw someone do this, how did they do it? Having that expertise where you can bring it in and work with it has been really important to us. So we went really heavy. We think we will be able to bend that curve back a little bit. So it was 1 to 2 the first semester. We think it'll be 1 to 3 the second. We think we'll eventually plateau out somewhere in the 1 to 5 range, because we've perpetually got new faculty coming into the environment. But that's really part of the support model, is we went really heavy on that. Now coming from industry, I'm not used to it, but here we have the luxury of a lot of student workers being available. And so it didn't like hiring full-time equivalents to come through and do something. So we can surge up and down with our student worker base depending on new things that are being rolled out or new issues that are coming out, or a group of new faculty that are coming on board. We can do a lot of work in that area. So that was some of you had asked how we handled the actual in-room support. That's one of the ways we're doing that.
So I'm going to real quickly lower the display so we can have a little better flat discussion capability. So make sure you don't have your arms, legs, or head underneath the display real quick. Okay, so again, a little bit of a background behind the technology committee. It was a committee that was put together by the dean. It existed for quite a while. I'd say we started in fall of 2015. I think that was about the time frame. And we continued really right up to the moment the building was completed. And there's even been some discussion, maybe we ought to keep it running. But we've had a lot of people that left over time and some were added. And so the main point is we had people from communications, facilities, IT, we had faculty, we had department heads, just a wide assortment of people involved. So we went through a lot of design process. We went through a lot of discussion of narrowing down particular capabilities that we wanted to have. We looked at the requirements for the building that were already set up and came up with a few possible choices. And that's when we began to talk about now we need to start presenting this, some of our options and some of our thinking to the faculty and to students. So that's when we entered into at least 2 department meetings that would make sure every faculty was contacted during this. We gathered lots and lots of data. We took a look at it and then worked to design according to our requirements and according to some of their desires and wants as well. Andy, from facilities side, when you look at being part of the technology committee, what do you think that really offered the committee bringing in facilities?
I think the impact of people coming and going at different times, access, softwares. Obviously, we're not the software people, these guys are, but having an input on there. So like the iLab technology software that we use, tracking the students coming and going in the common labs. I think it was beneficial to have a facilities voice there. Also our building management system. We could interact with the IT side of things on that. Our cellular system that we're implementing in the building. Just the impact of the traffic in and out of the building and some of those patterns, I think the facilities team gave some credence to that.
Yeah, I think, even when we worked with Steelcase on these tables, right, you have a lot of different people that have to take care of things in these systems. So, tables, Andy came from a background where he's supporting the department, and he's quite familiar with some of the problems of furniture. So when we were designing this, I know you gave a lot of input as to some of the pieces. And then from an IT perspective, we were able to shed some light on, well, that's his problems, but here's our problems too. These are things we deal with. And so we were able to get a lot of that design in. And so Steelcase now has a full production line, the active, it's the Verb table, active media table. That's their production design of these. It's won some awards now, and so it's real cool. They did not give us any extra kickback on that, or didn't put our names in the product number or anything there, right? So, but when we talk about these rooms, I think I've mentioned it before, but you can't look at just the table or just the T1V product or just the display. It's everything combined that really make this experience what it is. And Ed, when I think about your time there, you came from a very different setting than I think most of the people on that. How do you think that helped our committee?
Well, I think, and that was part of when we looked at who we wanted to have on the committee and level. We got lucky on a couple things, and luck plays a role in almost everything you do. We had one of our faculty member who is an expert on audio and has done research on everything you can imagine to deal with soundproofing. So it's more of a construction audio background. How do you soundproof rooms? How do you take advantage of design so many long conversations. He's not here to defend himself, so it's okay, but many long conversations that went into a lot more about how audio waves move within a room than I ever thought I would go through. But it was great having that expertise, and I think that would be the other thing I would promote to folks is when you go through processes like this, take advantage of the embedded expertise that's sitting around your campus or sitting around your organization to do some selective targeting, right? Find the audio specialist, find the learning specialist that can sit there and say, okay, yeah, there's competing theories from these 6 different studies, but, and I can guarantee you the tables were probably one of the longest experiences of my life, because not only did we have everyone wanting one leg, but 2 sideways because it would look better, and I'm like, that's why I'm not allowed to touch furniture in my own house, much less here. But having facilities going, no, you got to understand, Bubba weighs 220 pounds, and Bubba's going to sit on the corner of that table every time he comes to class. You can't build it that it doesn't take that stress level.
And 3 of Bubba's friends.
And 3 of Bubba's friends. So having that expertise in there was really important. So when you pick that kind of committee, think a little bit about their backgrounds. Get somebody that, if you've got them available from your engineering or science side, get some of that expertise embedded in that, because it will bring a lot to that discussion of things that you think of, right? So ADA became a huge issue for us, and we went through a lot of ADA discussions. Partner, the T1V, came back and helped us redesign where all the inputs for the screens are. If you notice, they're all fairly reachable. They're not, you don't have to reach the top of the screen to be able to do anything. So we went through a lot of that type of process, but the tables were a huge discussion to get right, because it was very important to what we wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to take you a little bit through the process of the way we thought about this. I think we kind of went away from the typical norm that most people use. They kind of come up with some ideas of how they want their class to work. They go and look at other places, and they'll find one that goes, oh, that's cool, and I'm going to copy that, right? So we've all done that. We've said, I want one of those, right? But instead, what we did is backed up and said, for one, well, we've got distance learning going on. So we thought about the space. How do we make sure we're going to deliver content to another location synchronously, so live, right? How do you do that? Well, to do it well, we realized we have to have a place, a digital surface that's able to capture our information, whatever we're presenting. Yeah, we could do whiteboards and shine a camera on it, but again, then we start looking at all the lighting around the room, and is it sunny that day, or is it raining outside, or you know, do we have a tall person that's casting a shadow over, you know, it just got a little ridiculous. So we began to have to look at a lot of different aspects, and when we came up with our final conclusions, we didn't just settle on just finding something that sort of worked. Anywhere from the tables to the technology to anything else in here, you'll find we put a lot of thought into it and how we're going to do things. So in the end, what we came up with is exactly what we wanted. Exactly what we wanted. We did not stray from it. We said this is what we want. I gave T1V some headaches occasionally when I tell them, you know, we really want this, it needs to do this, and you know, depending on which one you talk to, Jim's going to kick back and just, you know, yeah, we might be able to do it. I think we can do that. And you know, Jack, he might go, yeah, you'll have to talk to Jim. I just don't know about it, you know. So it's always been fun. I've really gotten to know these guys well as people with Steelcase, people with Crestron. So what you find out is as you work with other companies, when you have a good idea, they recognize it and they want to be part of it. And so that's exactly what we've done, is really create good partnerships with different vendors. And no matter who you're part of, whether it's facilities, IT, or faculty, or whatever it may be, you all get to benefit from that. Andy, I know even from your perspective, getting to work on this building, I mean, how many different people did you probably interface with and get to learn some new things from? I mean,
I've worked on a couple other projects, including emerging technologies building across the street, and this project by far had it 10 times as many contacts and people that we interacted with. Right. And so it's been truly an experience.
Well, and having that, you know, to my point of picking the right partners in the team, having a facilities person embedded in that process meant that when we said we wanted low profile raised floor, we didn't have to go spend a lot of time looking at 15 different I could call Andy and say, Andy, go find me the top 2 and let everybody come stand on it and jump up and down and see what they think and then pick one. So having the right resources available embedded into what we were doing, he heard all the design criteria about how far apart and what the paths had to look like. So he was able to take that and then do the selection side from a raised floor point of view of what he needed.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we were all in agreement of what it should be. And so, yeah, Andy knew what we wanted. I knew what we wanted. So I could even speak up on some facility issues, and I'd tell him, hey, I know Andy's going to tell you this. And Andy would tell him that. And Andy would say, well, I know IT and the rest of the group's wanting this. And sure enough, if they came to ask, yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I think that was a great thing that we could cross paths a little bit, and we could speak to each other's crafts just a little bit. Certainly not take over in speaking for one another, but we could talk enough about each part of the project.
Don't ever hear me think I'm going to be a facilities guy. I wouldn't even know. But the key point is I can recognize when something's not right. And I'll even say Andy needs to
Well, and there's some things that we think past because it's so ingrained in us that sometimes we bring that up and go, well, what about this? And Mark goes, you're right, or I say, you're right, Mark, and and so that was beneficial.
Yeah, there was no pride there. We all were very open to hearing that maybe our ideas weren't the right ones. Now what's interesting, and I'm going to say this, even though he's standing right here next to me, so he's my boss.
I'll write this one down.
Yeah, you're going to write this down. I can't remember how many times in a meeting we would talk about technology, and Ed would pipe up and go, oh yeah, we can do that. And being the good employee that I am, I'm sitting there going, what in the world did he have for lunch today? What is he talking about, And in some ways, Ed was pushing me a little bit to start thinking outside the box. I think that was his way of saying it can be done.
It's a confidence factor.
It is. So it was always a challenge, and I would think through it. I would call T1V, ask them, can y'all think through it? And Avanex, our integrators here in town, our Crestron people, we often had a lot of things working all together. This whole room, it's not, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just T1V, but it's working with Crestron, it's working with Steelcase. They all had to work together. So that meant all of those vendors had to work with each other as well. I know you guys had to meet with Steelcase a number of times to figure out how these tables worked, right? And to get that right. So once we got the tables, getting the lifts to work properly, knowing how that functioned, working with even the lift vendor, the person that sold the lifts to Steelcase. So it was a big challenge. Now, so we came up with our concept, we came up with our idea, had more town hall meetings. We were always including faculty. We were showing them what we were coming up with, and they would often get to see the result of their input, right? And I already mentioned today, one of the big things we heard was, I don't want to write on a screen like this because the students can't see what I'd previously been doing. So T1V was able to overcome that. And every issue that I can think of, we were able to overcome, unless some of the things they would tell us they wanted contradicted the requirements of the room. So some of those we had to just set aside, and also some of them we realized, well, the other 75% of our classrooms already cover that. And so we're good with that. So that was always something we kept in mind. We're not trying to rebuild those spaces, but we're coming up with an active learning space that also functions real closely to your traditional lecture space. Okay. So as we move forward, a lot of us really got involved with our prototype room. We were able to get one of our departments to provide that. Ed, what would you say is the value of a prototype room like that for a project like this?
Well, it was made or break from my point of view, because it was a place to take people to show them what it could be. Not so much about what it would be, because it obviously didn't look like this, but you could walk people in there who said, well, there's no reason for this because we don't need to teach like that, or we don't need this feature in there. Let them go see it, let them lay hands on it, and suddenly it becomes theirs. And so it's a lot easier at that point to come back then and get them to talk to everybody else saying, okay, yeah, we told them we wanted this, here's what this really looks like, we're okay with that. And so having that as part of your sales tool was huge. So being able to take somebody into that space and say, let's sit down and do it, right? So the four of us are all going to sit down and we're going to walk through a day in the life of what does that really look like, made it real for them. So yeah, I cannot, I mean, we spent a good piece of change on it, but more importantly than the dollars was what it let me do with the customer base.
Yeah, we also found that we were missing some components. Some things weren't going to work quite like we thought. And so we were able to determine what else we needed to add to it, or maybe we could subtract from it and change. Because imagine doing that once you have it all situated over here, the cost of it. And that was one of the key things I remember every time we would talk about the tables. Well, let's add this piece. It's only $100 times 650 tables. Okay? So everybody kept having to remind me, okay, Mark, that's $65,000 you just put out there. But it's $100. Okay. All right. I get it. So it was a really great learning experience. Now, with the tables, Andy, you remember we got some beta versions of the table in, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, we got some beta version, but and getting 16 tables in and 4 chairs per table and storing them until the room's ready for them. So that's some good practice there. Times however many we have in this building, so 32 classrooms and all the others in the public spaces. So that was kind of just doing one classroom. We got a good taste of, okay, this is the space we're going to need. This is how we're going to transfer these into this space. This is what really fits in the space. Not 16 tables, but 12. What are we going to do with the other 4? So then we started pushing some out into some public spaces and started seeing the students using them, started seeing the students sitting on them, like we discussed, but we did see them interact with them. But we got to see the furniture in action and see it in the actual facility space, see if it moved, see if the chairs were there the next 2 weeks. And right. So that was part of the experience for sure.
So we also placed these out into all the departments, right?
Right.
Talk about a little, why would we do that, and what was the value behind that?
So that was a logistical challenge as well, pushing a table out into each department. So I believe we put 12 tables out into different departments, into different buildings, and so that was logistical work there. But that was to get each department the experience of interacting with the table. And so those groups of students interacting with the table and knowing, hey, this is coming into the new Zachary. And so that experience for them and getting their buy-in and their excitement for it and actually getting their knowledge of the table. So whenever we did open this building, it wasn't just brand new to them.
And so we kind of built on the success of the tables by making sure we kept our proof of concept space available for a lot of demos. So we kept opening it up for faculty to come by and give us their input to see it. And a lot of times they would show up and say, I don't like this, or it could be changed. And so we'd give that feedback to T1V, and we would discuss it with them. And some things, yes, and some things, no. What I have found out is that T1V has been very, very accommodating to a lot of our requests, especially about little specific things. Like when I open this window, I don't want the audio muted, or if I do this, I always want the little tabs above. So it's a lot of detail, and they're very capable and willing to help take care of a lot of that. So that's been a great experience for us. But back to that proof of concept room, we had to use that for everything that we did, that we demonstrated, that we taught in. And we even had some classes go on in there. Ed, you want to talk a little about some of our experiences?
So be careful of the offers you make would be the way I would explain how we ended up with classes in there. We went out to a select group of faculty and said, we'd like you to come over and teach in this space. The intent of the offer was to come over with one class for one day. When they showed up with the suitcases to move in, I knew I was in a little bit more trouble, especially when 2 of the folks that showed up wanted to teach remote because they were on a program with TI up in Dallas and wanted to teach from Dallas back into campus. So be careful what you offer and be very explicit about what your offer is. So we ended up there with folks that said, yeah, I'll move my entire class over into a beta room. We knew we had a winner at that point in terms of it, putting their name on the list later to volunteer them to be the first movers in this space. But it was important to have that ongoing, and looking back at it, it was the right decision to have that ongoing experience. Because everything can work great one week in a room like that, and the next week it'll fall apart like you wouldn't believe. So they were very realistic when they went back to their department saying it works half the time. But it got better, so then it worked 75% of the time, and then it worked 95% of the time, and we got better at it. But having that real world, the experience of them dialing in or connecting in from Dallas and teaching remote, the students will tell you wasn't the greatest experience. But it was strange watching their feedback, because initially they said, no, we want them in the room with us. I want to interact with you personally in the room. I don't want a talking head on the wall. What a terrible way to make me pay tuition. But then it was sort of like, if that can't be the solution, what I don't want is not even to have the talking head available to me. I want at least to have that interaction versus trying to read it on my own and learn it on my own. So they figured out, the students figured out pretty quickly that that remote connection provided something they would not have gotten that summer, because those individuals were not going to be on campus. So it gave us an early taste into the distance side of things. It told us a lot about what we needed to have from a distance experience point of view on both ends. Do not underestimate the need to have high quality cameras and microphones for your remote instructors. There was a period of time where one of them had the proverbial $29 special from a local hardware provider. That was not a good experience. We FedExed them a proper camera and microphone to get past the reluctance to return it to Best Buy. But having that type of knowledge was really helpful when we went the next step out. It also proved the rooms could do it. So it was great having that prototype environment and having real classes in there that had to work every week changed how we approached that room and what IT did in terms of being ready for that kind of 100% availability, flawless execution.
Yeah, you know, we had a history of doing our distance courses using hardware codecs over dedicated lines to this and that. And you know, a lot of the Skypes, WebEx, a lot of those got some bad press. And as I began to look into it, I found out it's really because of the hardware on both ends, right? We began to look at what if we put some good high quality hardware, just like Ed's mentioning, on both sides of it. How does that change? And suddenly we have this beautiful, pristine, clear audio and video experience, okay? You've all been part of web conferences where the other side's, they're going, yeah, I hear you great. And you're going, I can't hear you. I don't know what you're saying. You know, it's not a great experience. And so that's where we learned both sides have to be ready for this, not just our side. We had ours all set, but when those instructors began to teach, we very quickly found out that's just not going to cut it. And they were open to understanding that. One of them, even for just a short while, put on a headset. As much as he hated to do that, he did for just a while till he got something better to go in there. So I want to spend just a little time allowing you to ask us questions. We can certainly continue our conversation, because when you meet for several years, we could go for hours talking about this, go over all the minutes from every team meeting, but I want to give you the opportunity. Yes, sir.
Going back to your relationship with T1V, and you talked about getting little things fixed or customized or whatever. Is that something that's part of a general support agreement, or do you have them on retainer, or how do you get those little one-off requests done?
Well, you know, I can tell you from my perspective how that worked, and T1V might have a totally different perspective about it. From my perspective, I think we both realized that as we were kind of helping build this new thing, that it made sense. You know, T1V didn't jump on there and do every single thing I sent them. Said, you know, I could say I'd like a black square in the middle of the thing. They might go, that's dumb. You know, they wouldn't tell me that. They'd go talk bad about me behind my back, but not into my face. And so we would negotiate. We'd talk. Now, did it cost me extra during that time as we're developing this? No, but that was a very special kind of situation. You know, I think at some point any company needs to recoup some of the costs for doing some things. And so in some ways, yes and no. But as we were developing this and making it exactly the product that was going to work here, I think everyone realized this was going to be a product that could work everywhere, not just this location. So, yes.
So obviously, I think I've already heard that you're looking to improve and enhance the whole remote connectivity and that
Yes,
experience.
yes.
Aside from that, are there any new, what are you excited about as a possible 2.0, a second version of that?
Yeah, so we were hoping to get a demo set up today, but we're just kind of running out of time. Jim, we might be able to set it up for this afternoon if people hang around, maybe?
Maybe.
I mean, the only problem is I'm actually not going to be here.
You're not going to be here? Well, if anything, I could do one room to another if we really wanted to show it. I have 2 rooms that have the software here, and so we could show you. So I'm kind of excited about that because so far the experience for our faculty and the students that have been part of the classes has been really, really positive because of the control they have over what they're seeing on their side and what we can do on our side. It's very simple to connect the two together. And that's what our faculty really love, simplicity. So that's probably what I'm looking forward to. The new camera someday, I'm looking forward to that. You know, there's some other things that some of the faculty have, but I mean, they're kind of smaller issues. T1V tells me about some of the new things they have, and it's probably something we want to look at, like the cloud-based kind of virtual canvas. You know, I think our faculty would love that, to be able to set up their presentations and things, notes before they get here, and be able to implement that. So a lot of things.
So if you'll notice, I'm moving farther away because that comment that was made earlier about occasionally being the idea kind of person that causes trouble. AR/VR is going to become huge, especially for our distance side. The other big area that we're going to make a big push on in the next year and a half is around auto translation.
Yep.
And being able to do auto closed captioning. It's not where you want it to be yet, but it's getting close. So somewhere in his future is me promising that we can do it, and him having to figure out how to live up to my expectations.
All the time. I'm gonna bet you he's already sat in front of the dean and said, "Yeah, we can get that for next year." Yeah.
I didn't give a date
Yeah.
yet.
Voice control in the room, I think, would be something else we're very interested in. So, you know, instead of hitting a bunch of buttons, I'd like to be able to say, "Hey, Zachary," that's what I'm going to name it. Hey,
Okay.
Zachary.
I'll try to get the fundraising in place for it. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Zachary's becoming an Alexa or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so lots of things are always kind of coming up, and especially when I go visit some of your places and other places, I get ideas, and we have a lot of faculty that give us ideas as well. Yes.
Ambient noise and things like that in these types of rooms. I mean, I hear the air conditioning. Have you ever tried any kind of acoustical, like electronic noise dampening?
So now this is my facility guy over here.
Yeah.
Andy, I'm going to guess that this is probably stuck on.
It is.
Because it runs high all the time and it never stops. So that's a sure sign that something's wrong up here, and that's what we're dealing with. Normally this room would be pretty quiet and it would be very easy to hear. It was designed to be that way, but when something's not working right, like this thing blowing high all the time, we're going to have fun.
I noticed it the second I walked in. So there's already an Aggie Works out there for it, but yeah.
Yeah.
But we did, and having the acoustics engineer on the group meant that we spent a lot of time in those meetings talking about how do I soundproof glass panels, right?
The specific question is noise canceling. Is
Yeah, white noise.
White noise,
Yeah.
we've got that in part in the building. We're
But-
still tuning it.
But you don't want that in your classroom.
Right.
Right, because what that's designed to do is to help minimize the conversations going on around you, including your faculty who's trying to teach in the room. So what you want is a space that will carry sound but not cause a lot of echo. You want people to hear well, so if I speak from here, I don't want to have to yell to be able to get to that person. And if this were off, you would find this would be a very pleasant experience and easily be able to be heard. Anybody else?
Yeah.
This is kind of maybe actually a question for T1V, but do you have any examples of how this is being used in non-STEM classrooms? I guess if I'm going to sell it, I'm going to have to explain how it can be used across the range of...
Well, just real quick, are you including conference rooms and lab areas and things like that? So we do all of that here. But yeah, I'll let T1V answer any further.
Yeah, we were just kind of throwing around some examples of current customers that are using it in different ways. We have a customer, Misericordia University, so they actually have ThinkHub installed in 8 collaboration rooms within their library. So those are group study rooms. So that's just kind of the ThinkHub brain. They don't have the full Connect system. And then we do work with a business school, so not exactly STEM, but we do have other use cases.
And we do courses in here. So there's an engineering ethics course taught by one of the other colleges that's held in this space. So that one's about as far from STEM as I can get. And then when, I mentioned to a couple folks, but when President Bush's funeral took place, it shut down several buildings across on the other side of campus. We took those classes in here. And so for a week-long period, we taught a lot of different things in this space.
Amazing applications in such a range of things like language classes and some of our history classes and stuff. It's just, it comes back to the documentation. Is someone already doing it? And that helps the case. That's all. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Someone else had a question over here. Yes.
It was a small one, but when we
I hate small ones. They're never small. So
when we had the demo earlier today with the monitors up, watching you kind of manipulate your screen, I literally probably a dozen times caught myself like trying to activate my screen somehow. And so right now it does not appear that is in place, that there's anything the tables can do.
We went a long way through, does the local table have to have touchscreen?
Okay.
And because many of the BYOD devices have touchscreens, we walked our way back from having to include that cost because it changed the cost model times 660.
Use case like.
And we struggled because you can reach it, the 2 on the closest, the 2 at the end couldn't. So we lost half of the touches that would occur, or a really long finger.
now that said, T1V does support touchscreens
Yeah,
on
so,
their.
so I think Texas A&M spent a lot of time on the design and figured out they actually didn't want to support touch here. But we do have other customers that ask for that, and so we do support a thing called ViewHub Touch, which is basically the same as ViewHub, but you can touch and annotate on top of the screen. And we've had other customers that they don't want to lay it out kind of like this. They want more, it's a little bit different use case, but they use actually ThinkHubs for students and then a main ThinkHub for the instructor. So, in general, these are all components that can be arranged in different ways for some different specialized use cases. I think, this is a great one for the active learning space in general, but.
I mean, even the displays around the room, those could be view hubs instead of something driven by Crestron, right? So you have all sorts of different ways you could do things if you wanted to have, and we talked about this with one person, if you wanted to have a room full of tables that are very mobile, no power to them, no data, how do you do something like that? And you mount the view hub to the wall. And I can now move my table right up to that display. We work there, and then I can move it anywhere else in the room I'd like to. So it's very, very versatile to use in whatever way you'd like. And when people come and say, well, I would like your drawings and I want to build one just like this, it makes me kind of cringe a little because, I really believe you need to spend some time to determine exactly what you need, because that really paid off for us. So determine exactly what you need, work with T1V or whoever it is, and come up with that solution that works perfectly for you. Yes?
How do you incorporate accessibility in your technology design?
Yeah, so accessibility, we have, well, actually, why don't you, I'll let you take that one.
So I got lucky, and I'll take luck anytime I can get it. About 3.5 years ago, we had an individual here on campus, Dr. Dandridge, who, for whatever reasons, lives and breathes accessibility. It is a passion. It is a direction she has gone. So I hired her as fast as I could and said, you own it for engineering. And so everything we designed, she was in the middle of validating our design to make sure that it met as to the letter of the law, intent of the law, and her wildest hope as much as we could. And so it really did been, she's heavily integrated with the university accessibility people. She interacts with the system accessibility people for all the other system members out there. So she is our point, and she was involved in almost every discussion we had, one way or the other, in terms of this.
I think she was like over my shoulder, always going, did you get a VPAT for that?
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah.
So we all have bruises, but it's okay. But she did drive a lot of that. Are we 100% where we would like to be right now? No. I still don't have the auto translation, auto captioning the way I would like it to work. We have a service that we buy that will take the videos and add closed captioning to them. I want it to be real time. We're just not there yet. I went out to the West Coast about 2 weeks ago and tried to borrow a system, but I couldn't get it. Wouldn't fit in the carry-on. But I'm still tracing it. So we're not there yet. Engineering, with the numbers that we've got, has a very high number of folks that have self-declared needing some assistance from an accessibility or from a disability point of view. So we have a motivation to be able to go help those students out. So we did embed this very heavily in the design side of this.
And of course, Andy's team also was very prominent in making sure everything was ADA compliant. And do you have anything to add?
No, on the construction side of things, so working on the project side of things, and then moving into the facility management side of things, yes, ADA is always right there, and accessibility is always right there, and there's always code that we're looking at and interacting with these guys on. You know, these screens hanging and mounting and all kinds of things that we were always, accessibility also for the displays, are they high enough? Do they meet that code? Those sorts of things. So, yep, facilities was right in the middle of it.
When we did our app development for the app for the building, part of it was until I can get people to opt in with an identity, I had to pick, when I gave them the blue dot path, so I want to go from room 2 to room 62, it gives you a path that is ADA compliant by default. Someday I'd like it to be a little more interactive with the folks, but right now everything we try to do is based on that.
And then along with that, we invited the entire university accessibility groups, anybody involved, to go to our prototype room and sit down and
so the fonts, the colors,
yeah, everything about
lots of input.
And so it was I remember opening that door going, okay, here I go, you know. So it actually ended up really, really well. So we took some of their input and made a few little modifications, but for the most part, it was fine. The tables all met the requirements. We designed these tables and the space so that someone with a disability, a wheelchair for instance, could sit at any table. Because as Deborah would tell us, how would you like to be always told you've got to sit at one table? We all like to choose our little places, but if we're designating one table for our disabled folks, then that's not exactly fair, and I agree with that. So if we can accommodate that, absolutely, and we've done that in these rooms.
Did you consider height adjustable mounts for the touchscreen?
We did. So we've actually got a screen that's not one of these, but it's a screen that we put an adjustable mount on. But really what we found out is with this 85-inch size that we could still keep it low enough for someone in a wheelchair to use, and it's still high enough for even a taller person. So we've had all types, and because this canvas moves, the person just simply brings it up to their level. So we have some tall people that mainly write here, but they can move the canvas around to bring things to them. And then we have some people that write down here at the bottom. And again, they're able to just drag the pieces to it. But by far, of course, we have most people that are reaching the full expanse. So
We worked with the folks to get the controls so that they can be located where they need to be on the screen and move things around to deal with that.
yeah, so even like for the menu, that was something T1V pretty much already had. If you've noticed, when I hit this menu, it brings it up here, but that can be a little high for some people. Well, guess what? I can come over here and just hold my finger down if I do it right here. There we go. And bring the menu up wherever I put my finger. Okay, so it's, again, super easy. It's real adaptable to anybody.
Yeah.
A couple of years down the road, when you're getting ready to upgrade some of your restaurant equipment, who's going to be doing the programming, and how is that going to integrate with T1V? How's that going to work?
So, a couple different ways. One, we outsourced a lot of that expertise in the launch with the intention of eventually bringing more of it in-house once we know exactly what skill sets we do need and which skill sets we can get.
Have a programmer, restaurant programmer in-house?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we're building more, but we like to build them gradually. So but we've got that kind of expertise that we eventually envision. It's like the network in this building, right? So I come from industry, so I'm not used to a capital purchase model working. So we went to a managed service. And so I pay a monthly rate. I get an automatic refresh at a certain point, and I don't have to staff to do all of that. So we've tried to take that approach with a lot of the other systems that we've integrated into it. But there will be the need to bring some of those skill sets on. We just didn't want to try to do it all the first time.
I was thinking also of the integration between T1V software and
Yep.
restaurant programming.
Yep, and I've got 2 or 3 programmers that they've been working on the web, on the application, they've been working on the kiosks. They're dying to get started on a couple other things we've got on their list. We've been letting them ease into it. Plus I wanted to see what we had to really do after the first semester.
And I will tell you this, there's not as much programming needed between the two as you think. It's really very minimal, wouldn't you say, Jim? I mean,
Several different signals that go back and forth, but
yeah, but nothing's needing to be.
Yeah, not a lot of need even for that to change, really.
Yeah, for instance, the dock feature, we're just simply, we tell the displays to show dock 1, but what is dock 1 is controlled by the ThinkHub. So it's not really an interface that they're speaking to each other. We're just sending signals for the most part, so it's very simplified. The only time I believe that Crestron talks to the ThinkHub is when we start the class or lift the tables from the control panel. That's it.
But we've got a lot of other things we use Crestron for in the
Oh, yeah.
building. And we will be building out the teams for that over time.
Those 3,500 other devices. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Am I correct that each table just has power cord and cat 6?
One of each.
That's
Yep.
one. And is it an option for faculty to move, to reorganize the room in any way? Okay, that's fine.
We can only move them during Christmas break and summer. Because if I don't hold firm to that, it gets chaotic around about Thursday afternoon. So, no.
And as you can imagine, say I have one faculty member who says, well, I want it this way. What about the other 6 that day? Right? So, yes.
How much do you allow the students to work with the software?
To work with what?
The software.
Oh,
Are you talking about the T1V itself? Yeah.
so that's really up to the faculty. Okay, the information on how to connect remotely is right up there in the corner, usually. Beta bug, right? So we try to push that more towards the students working at the tables. Okay, because their information, I can bring it up here or push stuff out here. We can have people connect, but there's really not that many use cases where we would do that in our setting. You may have something where you would have students doing that. But students can come up here and during class, if the faculty wants them to write on the board, that's fine. We've had high school groups come through here, and before I even say welcome, they've all gathered around the board and they're all writing at the same time and going crazy with it. I didn't show them anything, and they've already learned everything about it. So again, if I could have a high schooler as a faculty, we wouldn't need faculty trainings. So all I can say is the students would have no problem using this.
Now, a lot of them do presentations from the room, and they may put their presentation up as if they were an instructor from that side. But that's part of that curriculum in that course, is to have a capstone project that you're presenting off of or whatever.
You could also present it from your own device, correct?
Yep, you don't have to leave your seat, which appeals to a certain percentage of my student base.
Have policy around student use of the technology and
Have policy around what?
student use of the technology and software when faculty are not present, or?
We don't allow students in here free will, so they can't just wander in at 10 o'clock at night and pop the local football game up. Some have tried. So that's what the huddle spaces are for. They can hook up their Nintendos or whatever they want. This is not their largest gaming environment that I could ever build for them. That was a request that was denied. But they've got other spaces that they can plug into from that side. So no, we don't have a fixed policy that says we just don't unlock the door most of the time.
And during class, we kind of on the flip side, we had T1V add a little bit of security to the ThinkHub so that even if a student did connect to it, they cannot just automatically cast their screen up there or start taking control of the screen, right? Because there was a point where we had to sit down and think, okay, I'm a student. What can I mess up in here today, right? And so as we went through that, we realized, man, they could actually do a lot of stuff, right? And so now T1V gave us a very simple solution. By default, no one controls it unless you give that person access to do so. And it's a very simple little switch to do it. Other questions? All right.
Not a one-time offer, by the way. You think of something next week, email us, call us, smoke signals, whatever. Ask your questions. Let us. This, like I said, this is fun. So we enjoy telling folks about the fun we're having. So let us help. If there's something we can do, if you find solutions to anything we said we don't know yet, please share.
Yep.
I'll pay for the postage, or whatever technology you use. But let us know what you find out there. This is, to me, a collaboration. I spent my whole last fall at an EDUCAUSE conference just asking people, what did you find? Because I can borrow from the best that way. So if there's something we can do with that, let us know what we can do. And if you find the solution, share it.